Hello, everyone. This is Anthony with the Dragons of Victory. If you've spent any time within traditional Catholicism or you've listened to them, their influencers, or you know how they talk, you've heard the term cafeteria Catholic. What does that mean? Well, when you go to a cafeteria, you pick and choose. You look at what they got there on the buffet and you say, I like that, I'll take that. I don't like that, I won't take that. But that's not how you are supposed to approach faith or religion in their eyes. If you have complete, if your faith is true, right? If your trust in the church and in God is total and complete, then you eat everything that's on the buffet, metaphorically speaking. You don't. You take it all in and accept it all without saying, "Oh, I think you're right about that, but not about that." Um, and if you're dealing with a person, and person you could have faith in or trust, at least trust their intentions, trust that, their heart's in the right place and they're overall a good person. You could disagree with strategy or an idea they have, or they could be convinced that something is a fact that you just know is not. And so you can say, I don't think you're right about that, but I trust you in the sense of trusting your integrity, I guess. But you can't have honest mistakes if it's an infallible church. If it's God talking, God doesn't, in their from their viewpoint, can't say something and then say do this and then do that, and have them be opposite. There's no contradiction. It's a complete it's a complete seamless garment. There's I wear the entire garment. I eat the entire buffet or cafeteria. I'm not a cafeteria Catholic. I'm not like those other Catholics who don't accept certain things. I accept all of it. That's in a nutshell what they're saying. And my point here today, just wanted to hop on here to make this quick point, is that trad Caths are cafeteria Catholics too. And the reason for that is um, they reject Vatican II. They think Vatican II was a big mistake. And I know I can already hear the response from, a lot of Tradcath, whatever people in the comments. I know the argument is like, well, it's not magic, it's not doctrine. They didn't define dogma at Vatican II, so it's all free to ignore. Well, it was a restructuring of the church, and it is what the church is now. So obviously there's to have that viewpoint of like I reject Vatican II or I don't accept it or I don't I want to pretend like it never happened, which is I think across the board something that unites the traditional Catholic world is just like let's just undo Vatican II or just pretend it never happened. They all want that. And that's not being faithful. That's not accepting that that the Holy Spirit, and I say all this as an agnostic, as someone who doesn't believe any of it, but if we're taking the whole framework as presented of the church is is established by Jesus, who is God, and it's teaching us about what God wants, but then to say accept this one thing. You might even say, "Oh, I'm only not choosing this one thing at the cafeteria," but it's not choosing one thing that's everything, because by practically speaking, by having the mindset of I reject Vatican II, um, it 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 puts you it's being a cafeteria Catholic. It's pot calling the kettle black, and they have the the chaos within the traditional Catholic world is precipitated upon their inability to figure out what to do about this issue they have with Vatican II, to how to present it to the outside world and to themselves as how we can even say that this church council was illegitimate or maybe legitimate but flawed and wrong and not the right thing to do. you you've you've immediately put yourself in the cafeteria. You're immediately picking and choosing there. And I know I've heard all the arguments. I've heard all the responses. It was a complete break from the past. It was a completely different thing than what was before in the church. There's no way you can reconcile the two things, the church before Vatican II and the church after. There's no way you can reconcile them. I've heard all those arguments. And if that's true, fine. That's actually one of the many reasons I'm no longer. I don't. I've lost my faith. I tried for so long to keep it, but I couldn't square these contradictions together. So I just eventually decided it wasn't true. But within the traditional Catholic world, if you because they have the mindset that we're doing it the right way. We're the people who've got the right information that nobody else has, and um, we're accepting all of it, but we can't everything the church teaches, but we can't accept Vatican II because it's the opposite of what was before. Let me just real quick tell a Bible story you probably know. In the Bible, in the God talks to Abraham, and he tells Abraham to murder his son Isaac, to sacrifice Isaac to God. Now, God didn't actually want Abraham to do that, as we all know, but Abraham believed that God was instructing him to kill his son. And God did instruct him to kill his son. And then, as he was about to, God stopped him and said, "No, I don't want you to do that." Contradiction. I mean, you can throw all the arguments at the theological arguments of like, well, you know, it, it, it was a test of faith and whatnot and blah blah blah. I've heard it all. Just getting down to brass tacks, getting down to what the text says and what's actually in there. God says one thing, and then he says another. Do this, actually don't. Now didn't intend Abraham to actually kill Isaac at all, but that's deception. And I'm not doing this to get all focused and hung up on the story of Abraham and Isaac. I'm bringing that up to say to the trad cats, what you always insist on, what you hammer in all the time is surrendering of intellect, surrendering of the will. If it doesn't make sense, too bad. And if you're saying something so and so doesn't make sense, if you're saying this is a contradiction to that, or I don't agree that that could be true in terms of church teaching and whatnot, then you're ye of little faith. You're a bad person for doubting, and you have, and they take your objection to your unemotional, like, wait, this and that are not the same. They take that argument and say, well, the only reason you're saying that is because you want to sin, or blah blah, or you don't have faith in everything. And it's like, I'm not saying I don't have faith, but I want these two things that are opposite to make sense, and they can't together. And there's every Catholic, mainstream and traditional, admits that the concept of the Eucharist, on the face of it, and rationally, strictly speaking, doesn't make sense. Some, I'm not trying to mock the Eucharist at all here. I'm just pointing out the fact that oftentimes they'll say, "Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's silly. It's stupid. It's like clearly wrong, but my faith is so strong I believe it anyway because that's what I'm being told." And I would just say to traditional Catholics, ye of little faith, you're demonstrating your lack of faith and trust in the power of God and his care for his church by thinking that this could happen in the first place. That if Vatican II was as bad as you say, and it was so awful, then and it's happening in the one thing in the one institution that's supposed to be the only good thing in the world when the rest of the world is evil, right? It's a blatant contradiction, and it's a contradiction so blatant that uh, it's it it's the gasoline for the flame of chaos that you constantly live in within the traditional Catholic world. And they always look at the Protestants and say, "Oh, look at all their denominations. Well, we're here with our one unified church." It's like, yeah, right. The FSSP, SSPX, Sedevacantist, all those groups, um, at each other's throats, fighting nonstop, and looking like a family at a restaurant that screaming and throwing food at each other and strangling each other, but at the same time mocking everyone else in the restaurant for not joining them. And again, it's a pot calling the kettle black situation. It's uh, influencers and people who go on and on about how they're doing something, they're doing everything right, and these people are doing everything wrong. When if you had faith, if you believed everything the church taught, you would accept Vatican II. And I know they throw out like, oh, it wasn't a dogmatic thing. Um, we don't have to give it our assent of will. It's still remade the church, and it's what the church is today. And you, by being a traditional Catholic of any sort, you've begun kind of separation from that. First, like aesthetics aside, personal feelings aside, just strictly speaking, you're starting a path of doubt. You're starting a path of that one thing in the cafeteria right over there. I'm gonna eat I'm gonna eat all this other stuff. This is the trad cath, showing the cafeteria Catholic how good they are. It's like, see that cafeteria Catholic? He's picking and choosing. I'm eating everything in this buffet except this big Vatican II tray right here. And the Vatican II tray is the entire tray. So, you know, this was just meant to be a brief little commentary here, a brief little point to make that there are endless examples of these people, especially online, especially the influencers, the people who are think that it's my job, to put myself out there and convince people that traditional Catholicism is true and to impose the social reign of Christ the King and yada yada. Um, it's just one of many blatant contradictions in their behavior that you can point out to them. It's just one of the many logs in their eyes that you can point out while they're pointing out the splinters in others. And I mean, this contradiction is one of the main reasons that trad cats talk about so much. Is one of the main reasons uh, I lost my faith, because they just kept on bringing up, when I was there and afterwards when I left, they just constantly bring up how the Vatican II Church is like not uh, not matching what was in the past, and it's like, a you may it's and on the one hand, I think there's some truth to that to a degree. There's definitely a lot of truth to that, which is why I don't believe in any of it anymore. But also, uh, if you're being, I would say, based on my experience, that if you were, your job as a good Catholic, as a person of faith, is to ignore that, is to ignore the contradictions that you see, and to just trust that they're reconcilable somehow. And it's not up to you to, and that sounds so authoritarian and like contrary to reason, which it is, but there's so much that they blatantly say they do, that they believe in, that contradicts reason, but they believe it anyway because the church teaches it. Well, this is what the church is teaching now, trad cats. So stop picking and choosing and eat the entire buffet. That's all, and I hope you fly away to victory.